The new Elden Ring DLC has so many new bosses, way more than I could have ever expected. I didn't recognize any of them though. I don't know what happened to the Glow-Eyed Queen, or Millennia's Blind Sword Master, or Ronnie's Master the Snow Witch, or Godwyn, or the Outer Gods. Really, any of the potential bosses they set up in the main game. None of them made an appearance. It was a totally new, unexpected cast, which I don't think was for the best, not when they added an eighth tree avatar boss to the game. The last enemy I wanted to carry over into the DLC was another tree avatar. I don't remember being less excited to take down a boss than this single encounter. There are cheap ways of adding difficulty to a boss, and having three stages of hell might be the least creative. Right up there with just throwing more opponents into the boss arena in constant, undodgeable AoEs. This boss did have one interesting move, the rush attack at the start of the second phase. The rest of its moveset consists of the usual delays and tracking magic. Very normal learning process with an extremely annoying health pool. Its remembrance weapon is a black colossal flower that looks really cool actually. Solid B tier boss, doesn't add anything to the DLC experience as a whole. This next boss was absolutely horrible. I don't understand why they were adding to the game, and there is no way anyone test played this and approved it. The Golden Hippopotamus was easily one of the worst bosses From Software has ever designed. Worse than the Living Failures, worse than Bed of Chaos, worse than anything in Dark Souls 2. Just a terrible experience all around. You're constantly being pushed into a wall, or the hippo's mouth is blocking your entire screen, or you're disappearing inside the hippo's body each time it attacks. This thing also has a massive health pool. F tier. F tier boss, maybe the worst boss of all time. Now for Ramana. This was an excellent boss. Her moveset was very unique, where she occupied the center of an arthropodal millipede scorpion mixed body and alternated between slow and fast attacks with both tails as well as her pole weapon. Her rolling attack is also more manageable than God's Noble's, who actually doesn't stop rolling until he hits something. I've dodged his rolls as many as 4 times in a row, but he refused to stop until he hit me. She's an A tier boss, absolutely worth being in the DLC. Now Bale was interesting. He's one of the bosses I was hard stuck on and forced me to respec. That is something I really hated about this DLC. You can't go with creative or fun builds if you care about progression. I originally started the DLC with the Faith build because I thought there would be very strong, very cool looking Faith weapons just rolling in, but there really weren't. If you aren't going for massive status effect damage or using a meta build, then the game quickly becomes borderline unplayable. Also, for some reason, they decided to make Perfume really strong. The weapon options for PvE were for the most part just not that good. Perfume and Bloodfiend's Arm did do insane amounts of damage, but they're really ugly to use and break any sense of immersion I had going into the DLC. My character is not going to be using Perfume to kill these demigod bosses. Also, because I had to change my character, this fight wasn't really fun for me. I ended up respecking so I could use the Dragon Hunter's Katana, which almost feels like the weapon was made just to kill Bale. I also didn't enjoy the constant running and massive AoE attacks, although the build-up and lore around Bale was amazing. The Dragon Priestess lady really hyped him up, and I loved being able to see him on the map before I even got anywhere close to him. Just thinking about one of the bosses being a great red dragon was really exciting on the way there. The history between him and Placidusax was just added anticipation. To finally know the reason why Placidusax fell from being an Elden Lord, Bale is an A tier boss even though I hated him. Mesmer was a surprise to run into. I actually thought he was the final boss of the DLC, but I found him relatively early on in the Shadow Key. The fight against him is very aggressive and fast paced, but at this point I was getting really bored with the explosions after every single attack gimmick. That's pretty much every boss in the main game and the DLC at this point. Millennia second phase, Mog Lord of Blood, Radagon, Godfrey, Bale, Rolana second phase, the Dancing Lion second phase, and Radon the final DLC boss was the biggest abuser ever. Why is every attack ending with an explosion? It's the easiest way to improve nothing about the boss's moveset while adding to the difficulty. I was completely sick of AoEs at this point, but still Mesmer was visually stunning to fight against and I wore his armor for the rest of the game. A tier boss. Now Midra was the best boss in the DLC. Never got bored, his attacks were actually fun to dodge, didn't mind him going off at all. His intro cutscene was amazing to watch, maybe one of the best cutscenes ever. It's a very action-packed fight and I was on edge for every second of it. They also did a wonderful job building him up, forcing you to travel on foot through the creepy abyssal woods where you could get one-shot grabbed at any moment. This is one of the only bosses worth experiencing again. S tier boss for sure. Rana was another boss I got hard stuck on. She just had too much health and forced me to try a bunch of different approaches. Her first phase is beautiful, top 5 From Software movesets ever. Without a fast, light roll, I don't know if this fight is even possible. She's coming at you non-stop the entire time. Every move is either going to do damage or close the gap between you. She's also a monster roll catcher, and oftentimes she'll evade and jump off in the same direction as you, forcing you back into the interaction. I'm not really a fan of her second phase. I think the fire and magic buffs are unnecessary. Her moveset is already so refined and outright gorgeous to fight against, there is no reason for ridiculous fire trails blowing up the screen. If they could have just added her second phase new moves without the buffs, she'd be a perfect boss in my eyes. There were also a couple of times she did this weird thing where she cast her tracking magic on top of her falling twin moves. It's an undodgeable combo, because her tracking magic either throws off your jump timing and you die to her twin moons, or her tracking magic stuns you out of the air and forces you to take the remaining damage of her twin moon attack. It's probably the second most unfair thing about this game, where I absolutely felt cheated. She's an A tier boss. Where I felt the most cheated was against Radon. Especially this 1-2 slash attack he has, you can't dodge this on console. I've tried a light roll, medium roll, forwards, backwards, sideways, it doesn't matter. You can't dodge this attack. You can only prepare to waste more time healing. It's actually insane though, because an undodgeable attack wasn't even the most ridiculous part about this fight. It's not being able to see a single thing in the second phase. That's a recurring theme here in the DLC. An honest warning to anyone who's going to pick it up. You won't be able to see anything during any boss fight ever. Bale, Radon, the Golden Hippo. You will spend the majority of your time being unable to see. Not only are there golden lights flashing everywhere every second you're fighting him, Mikola has this giant mane of golden hair that completely covers up what Radon is doing. What happened to Ishin, Sword Saint, and Slave Knight Gale? Final bosses that were worthy of the title of Final Boss. Elden Beast in the main game, now this awful mess in the DLC, they've completely lost touch with what a good final boss should be. There are moments where I just felt nothing after beating some of these new DLC bosses. There was a time when From Software didn't have to rely on physically blinding the player to make a challenging boss fight. F tier. Possible worst final boss ever. Definitely the worst final boss cutscene ever. Mikola was just a massive disappointment. Lion. This was actually the first DLC boss I fought against. Not a positive experience though. Once again, I couldn't see anything. He also kept getting stuck in the air and then jumping forward in time right as he attacked, so my screen would freeze and then I'd have to just dodge as fast as possible. He was really interesting looking though. 2 men in a lion suit trying to kill you. But the timing on his ice attacks also seemed to have no consistency whatsoever. I never really understood how to dodge them, and the remembrance was trash. The lion helm was really good though. I actually loved wearing it. Wore it in the final boss fight, but this is a B tier boss. Commander Gaius. This boss is universally hated and his moves are total BS. But I'm actually a really good horseman and had fun fighting him with Torrent. Some of his moves also felt inconsistent and undodgeable, but I still had a lot of fun. B tier boss. I did fight hidden bosses Mother Meter and Putrescent Knight, but I'd already beaten Radon by that point and was just doing too much damage to really learn anything about them. The experience seemed average, although I will say Mother Meter had one of the best boss arenas ever created. Being down there looked amazing. I consider them both B tier bosses based on what little time I spent with them. Yeah, this is Radon's 1-2 slash attack that you can't really dodge.